Irish guy, and we all make mistakes. I mean, my biggest mistake of my life was getting blocked by Boovie. To this day, I still feel like a baby panda bear has chewed out my heart. But today, I'm going to take a look at every Premier League club and just find the biggest mistake every team has made this season. Right, let's go. Arsenal loaning out Kieran Tierney. Look, Mikel Arteta has not made many mistakes this season. This has almost been a perfect season for this squad. So me trying to nitpick something they did wrong, it's almost impossible. I believe me trying to find flaws in the Dark Knight films.
Oh, I didn't think Christian Bale's left eyebrow was combed well enough.
It's like me bursting into Floyd Mayweather's palace and criticizing him for leaving cookies in the sink. No, Arsenal have been great, but it's also going to be a trophyless season. I mean, for a winner like Arteta, that is failure. And I think loaning out Kieran Tierney to Real Sociedad was monumentally dumb. Lad, there is a worldwide shortage of quality left backs in football, to such an extent that when trying to pick their teams of the year, Gary Neville went with Spurs' Destiny a doggy. Despite Tottenham's defense looking leakier than a busted loo, left back has been a problem for the Gunners this season, going through Zinchenko, Kiefor, Tomiyasu. All three have been about as reliable as a blind babysitter. You know, the one who chucks the baby in the microwave and tucks the bowl of ready break into bed. It only feels like 5 minutes ago that Tierney was in the conversation to become the next Arsenal captain. Even Man City were sniffing around him last season, and yet to just throw him out to Real Sociedad on loan for free. Why? Having a fit Tierney at left back this season, he would have cleaned up that weak spot in the team, surely. I know he's had his injury problems in Spain too, but if you had kept him fit, I think he'd replace Zinchenko in the team after Christmas, and at the very least, you might then have squeezed past Bayern Munich in the Champions League. Aston Villa underestimating Olympiacos. Okay, I don't know for sure that Unai Emery and the Villa backroom team didn't do their homework on Olympiacos, but it sure looks like it. It feels like everybody at Villa Park thought that this club had one foot in the Europa Conference League final ever since battering Ajax 4-0 in the last 16. In that match, where they absolutely blew away a club who were on the verge of a Champions League final 5 years ago, when they embarrassed Jordan Henderson on the Villa turf, making him look like a nervous pupil who wet his pants during the assembly. I think everyone connected with this club thought, yeah,
Guys, we're a Champions League level team. This competition is too easy for us. Of course we're in the final.
yeah, that complacency showed in the quarters, where they needed penalties to squeeze past a very average Lille, where Emiliano Martinez cemented himself even further as the villain of France. Honestly, all that guy needs to do is upload an Instagram photo of him stamping on a croissant. And I'm sorry, but to then lose 6-2 on aggregate to Olympiacos is weak. Letting a 30-year-old Moroccan striker, Ayoub Al-Kabi, somebody who no Aston Villa fan would have ever heard of, letting him score 5 goals over 2 legs, weak. Look, I get it, okay? I mean, this is some Greek team who briefly had Carlos Carvajal coaching them over Christmas. Someone who wouldn't get a Premier League job now, even if he offered to wipe a football chairman's bum for a month, but still weak. Bournemouth players learning slowly. I blame Bournemouth's players for this one. If they had taken Dandoni Iriola from day one and actually listened to the wisdom he was trying to impart, this could have been a season where they fought for European football. Don't tell me they weren't still pining for their familiar comfort blanket Gary O'Neill, someone who wasn't really a manager, she's just a mate, somebody who they could play Xbox with on away trips, someone who they could play spin the bottle with after training, because this Cherries team, they didn't win any of the first 9 league games. That isn't normal. I mean, soon after that, they were winning 6 out of 7 matches. That is a monster turnaround. That beginning of the season was rotten and embarrassing for Iriola. It made him look like an incompetent badger in this new nation. You know what that made him look like? Everyone was looking at this foreign unknown, the same way La Liga fans were probably looking at Gary Neville when he was a national joke with Valencia. The fact that Iriola had to endure sack rumors before he'd even put down a deposit on a house, before he'd even got a Costa Coffee loyalty card, shocking. And I blame the players for that. Brentford burning out Ivan Toney. Ivan Toney has been mismanaged by Brentford this season. I'm sorry, but he has. Look, I know he is your complete talisman, and you wanted to rush him back into the team. But come on, he missed what, 9 months of football? Was he then eased back into the side gradually? Absolutely not. Thomas Frank kept Toney on for the full 90 minutes. For his first 12 games back, he wasn't subbed once. Don't tell me that didn't burn him out. You explain to me then why Toney scored 4 in his first 5 games back, and then a big fat bag of nothing in his next 11? He was finally dropped to the bench 3 months later, but by then you'd already worn him out to not even substitute him off the pitch once, when he'd just been sitting at home eating scrambled eggs on toast for the length of a pregnancy. That was poor. Brighton not having a #1 goalkeeper. Brighton have had a very average season, and they might still finish in the bottom half of the league, which would have been unthinkable after their flawless start. But I'm sorry, Roberto De Zerbi, you only have yourself to blame. This season, 21-year-old Dutch international goalkeeper Bart Verbruggen has played 26 games. 33-year-old ex-Sunderland flop pancake Jason Steele Lille has played 22 games. I'm sorry, but that is ridiculous. They've literally shared the season. Verbruggen is young, yes, but he's supposed to be a budding star, and you're letting him spend large chunks of his debut season rotting on the bench? How on earth does Zerbi expect to get any sort of consistency when he is chopping and changing the most important position on the pitch every time he sneezes? Neither goalies will be able to get into any sort of rhythm. Neither one will have any confidence that they're playing the next game. You can't leave Steele out for 5 matches and then just throw him in to face Man City. No wonder City stuck 10 goals past them this season. Poor from De Zerbi. Just pick a number 1 and stick to it, you indecisive leprechaun. Burnley not sacking Vincent Kompany. Look, this is stupid to say because I still think Vincent Kompany is better than Burnley. I think he is a top coach and will be cooking at a team like Spurs this season, but I don't think he'll ever be a true success at Turf Moor, and I think everybody needs to realize that. He cannot implement Guardiola ball on a bunch of Neanderthal rugrats with the technique of lemon pie, not in the Premier League. The man clearly isn't willing to chuck his beautiful Cruyff ball philosophy in a bin and to become more Sean Dyche. I think he would sooner eat Craig Bellamy's dog in a hamburger than betray his footballing principles, which is fine. I respect that. But it does mean that both parties should have just shook hands and agreed to walk away in November. It wasn't working, and it never will work. Burnley should have brought in a more pragmatic defensive coach like Nuno Santo halfway through. Maybe then they'd have stood half a chance. Chelsea fans making Pochettino feel unwelcome. I feel bad for blaming the fans, but I'm sorry, Chelsea, this one is on you. I think Pochettino is proving that he is the right man for the Chelsea job. But can you imagine if he just felt a welcome at Stamford Bridge from day one? The man has already told the world he doesn't feel the love from the Chelsea fans. And can you blame him? Half of them were accusing him of being a Tottenham spy. This wasn't quite like when Chelsea booed Rafa Benitez out of the club. I mean, he was literally having to win a European trophy for them through gritted teeth, when he had half the fan base telling him that he should be out serving fried meatballs in a Spanish restaurant. If Pochettino had not felt such ugly pressure from the fans, if he didn't have YouTube gremlins screaming at him to be sacked for 2/3 of the season, then this Chelsea team might have gelled sooner and qualified for the Champions League. Crystal Palace not sacking Roy Hodgson sooner. Right now, Crystal Palace are on fire, but lads, we know this fiery Oliver Glasner project is not going to last forever. I give it one more game. I think we all get 3 months of a perfect storm before Michael Olise gets sold in the summer. But can you imagine if Glasner had been given a full season of working with Eze and Olise? That could have been the case. If you had just sacked old man Roy Hodgson last summer, somebody who was just a managerial placeholder, and if you had immediately brought Glasner in, given him a full pre-season, this could have been an amazing year. I mean, come on, Palace have taken 16 points for the last 18 available. Spread that sort of form out over an entire season. And lads, Palace could have qualified for Europe. Everton, the Beto signing. This has been a great season for Everton. Price well, they've had 15 clean sheets. But if I were to criticize one thing, it was the Beto deal. Lads, for a cash-strapped, financially ridiculous Everton right now, then spending £21.5 million on one player is a risk. That was like a return to the recklessly free-spending Everton of old, when they were casually throwing £30 million at a Theo Walcott, creeping towards retirement. This is like seeing your alcoholic nan knocking back a Bailey's on Christmas Day. I mean, you're groaning in your head because now, oh, she'll soon be dancing naked on your PlayStation and trying to kiss the cat. Giving Udinese £21 million for an unproven Beto, someone who just screams Joe. And you remember that Brazilian misfit striker? Nope, I didn't think so. About as memorable as any Jimmy Fallon joke. Beto has scored 3 Premier League goals in 29 games. That is poor. Joe levels of poor. But £21 million could have been better spent on a Premier League proven striker. Even Danny Ings should have been more use. I mean, that would have probably even persuaded Newcastle to sell an aging Callum Wilson in January. I mean, wow, put Wilson into this Everton side and they're finishing top half. Fulham signing Amanda Broya on loan. Just completely pointless, wasn't it? Liverpool announcing Klopp exit in January. I've already said it at the time, but the biggest mistake in Liverpool's season was Jurgen Klopp telling everybody that he's leaving the club back in January. Liverpool were literally top of the league in fine form, and he chose to deliver that absolute rocket of news when everything was going well. What? Did he not think that would be an absolute distraction for the players? Lads, Sir Alex Ferguson knew he was quitting Man United back in the Christmas of 2012, but because they were in an active title race, he didn't tell anyone. I mean, the clues were there. Like when he was too devastated to do a post-match interview when they lost to Real Madrid in the Champions League. He knew that was his final ever European match, and it was spoiled by our ref. If he had told this squad that he was off in the summer, back in December, what would that have done to the morale? I think Klopp telling the world that he was off, it did have a bad impact on performance levels. Of course it did. I mean, Liverpool have failed to win 9 games of football since then, losing 5. Yeah, they'd only lost 1 Premier League game of football up until that point. Honestly, Klopp, Bad decision. Luton Town, the Bournemouth collapse. The turning point of Luton Town season was Bournemouth away. The replayed game in mid-March where Luton, they raced into a 3-goal lead and then they just didn't know what to do. The entire coaching staff and the players on that pitch. Oh, they froze. 3-0 up in the Premier League at half-time. They were about as prepared for that reality as they would be for aliens to abduct Jurgen Klopp. They wouldn't have a clue how to respond. What, just wave goodbye to him as he's being dragged through the clouds? If Rob Edwards had done something, anything, done any sort of managerial experience to grind out this 3-0 win, then Luton would have been out of the relegation zone and would have kicked on. But no, they absolutely crumbled. Conceding 4 second-half goals without reply. That absolutely flattened the confidence of this Luton squad. And they never recovered. Man City burning out Haaland. If I was a Man City fan, then I see this season as a missed opportunity. Lads, don't underappreciate just how close City came to back-to-back trebles. Something that is just too ridiculous to compute. If Man City had not been dumped into the Champions League with Real Madrid and penalties, then lads, this would probably be the scenario. Beat West Ham in the Premier League at home, beat Manchester United in the FA Cup final, again, and beat Borussia Dortmund in the Champions League final, win those 3 games, and you just become the first team in world football to lift back-to-back trebles. What happened then? Will we get another Netflix doc? Does Jack Grealish's liver look for the fire exit in his stomach? The only reason that hasn't happened is because Pep burned out Haaland a little bit. Don't forget, City dominated the home match against Real Madrid, but Haaland was subbed off before extra time because he asked to come off, having felt tired. So did De Bruyne, by the way. And why was Haaland tired? Because he just crammed in pretty much the full match against Arsenal, Crystal Palace, Luton, and the first leg against Real Madrid. All of that into just 2.5 weeks? That's too much. Julian Alvarez should have started the games against Palace and Luton instead, and then Haaland would have stayed on for the extra half an hour against Real and probably scored the winning goal. Man United signing Mason Mount. Manchester United made so many mistakes this season, but the worst, spending £60 million on Mason Mount and then not having a clue what to do with him. The club has bought a Champions League winning midfielder with absolutely no plan. Yes, he's had injuries, but when he's been fit, he's barely started a match. His best position is probably number 10, right? Yeah, Manchester United's best player is a number 10. What are we doing here? This entire move has been one big disaster. At the minute, he is such a spare part. Right now, he's the English Donny van de Beek. He was also signed with absolutely no plan in place. And now, after being messed around by the club for years, his career and confidence is in such a dreadful spot that he's now been a bench-warming flop at Frankfurt this season. Oh yeah, and he failed at Everton too. Yes, Mount, you know my permission to be terrified. Newcastle, naive in Champions League. Newcastle were naive in the Champions League. I'm sorry, but they were. After beginning the group of death by getting a point at AC Milan and then thumping PSG at home, finishing bottom of the group should never have been on the cards. But in the final game, they're 1-0 up against Milan at home, and they're in a very real conversation to finish second in the group. Then Milan equalised through Christian Pulisic. Don't worry, okay? A 1-1 draw still sees Newcastle into the Europa League, but because PSG were drawing a Borussia Dortmund, Eddie Howe wanted to catch them and steal second. You couldn't resist. All Newcastle needed was a win, so yeah, they went all out for the victory, and in the end wound up with nothing. They kept flooding forward, desperately trying to score the winner, but Milan caught them on the break. Samuel Chukwueze firing in a late winner, and that was Europe over. A more pragmatic head would have consolidated third. The Europa League was winnable. I mean, they sort of made Newcastle's Europa League path to the final. Rennes, Slavia Prague, Roma, and then Bayer Leverkusen. They could have reached the semi-finals at least. To me, that was a naive waste. Nottingham Forest hiring Nuno Santo. Look, Nuno Santo is going to keep Forest up, but let's be real. It hasn't really worked, has it? He's a quality coach, but I just think he's at the wrong club. With Palace's dazzling squad of street ballers, they deserve a coach who plays more on the deck. Even someone like Graham Potter would have probably been a better fit than this bearded Big Sam. Tottenham, Postecoglou turning on fans. Look, Ange Postecoglou is a spiky creature, but I think him morphing into Antonio Conte this week and turning on the fans was not clever. Yes, I also thought it was a bit stupid to see Spurs fans doing the Poznan in their own stadium when Man City scored against them, but Ange, you ain't a Tottenham fan. Of course you don't care if Arsenal win the league, but Spurs fans do. Fast forward to mid-July. Do you think any Tottenham fan would still be pleased to have drawn with Man City 1-1 2 months before, with the title-winning Arsenal fans now insufferable every day on social media? Of course not. Seeing Arsenal win the league whilst they finish 5th, that would hurt way more than losing to Man City. And if you're going to turn on your own fans to it when you're winning, Jurgen Klopp has had to go with his own fans after games, but it's been when he's doing his part by winning football matches. Tottenham's sort of form has been awful. It's a Champions League bottle job. 5 defeats in 6 games, handing Aston Villa the top 4 on a plate. Do not turn on your own fans now, Ange. Not when you're serving up relegation form. I promise you, it will not end well. Can you imagine if he had started the season with 5 defeats from 6? He'd have been sacked before September was out. West Ham treatment of David Moyes. What is it about football clubs failing to sack David Moyes properly? Imagine Teddy Moyes back in 2014 when he embarrassingly had to read about his own upcoming Manchester United sack in the papers before anybody had bothered to ring him. Imagine Ted again that a full 10 years down the line, he'd be West Ham manager and having to read about someone else being interviewed for his job. The fact that Ruben Amorim was flown into London for talks before anybody had announced that Moyes was leaving in the summer, that was a really poor way to treat somebody who literally delivered you a European trophy last year. Poor Wolves, the Gary O'Neill love it. Why on earth was Gary O'Neill linked with a job at Manchester United this season? Why did Liverpool have to let the world know that he was not on the shortlist to replace Jurgen Klopp? This Gary O'Neill loving is embarrassing. Anyway, that's the review. What was the biggest mistake? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give a like, share, and subscribe as always. I'll talk to you in a while.